Okay, can I welcome you to the virtual cabinet meeting of the Vale of Glamorgan. It's Monday the 22nd of November at 2 o'clock. I will start the agenda if I can, but apologies for absence. I think there are none. The next item is minutes of the previous cabinet on the 19th of October. Can I have anybody to move to record, please?
Formally second, Leader.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Yes, good, thank you. Next item is to receive any declarations of interest, if there are any. No, I have one. I will be declaring at agenda item 10, which is the Bowls Club new leases. I do so because I've been asked to be the honorary president of Cardickston Bowls Club, which I said I would carry out just before the pandemic. I haven't carried out any actions, but I think it's right and proper that I will declare an interest. I've submitted a form of dispensation which hasn't gone through standards yet, so I will be declaring leaving the meeting. But what I would ask is that item 10 would therefore be taken at the end of part 1, which would be after item 14. I will leave the meeting. I understand that there is I do know there's a part 2 meeting later, so I will rejoin it at that stage. So is any other declarations of interest? No. Okay, before we go into the references proper and the reports of the meetings, I would like to say a couple of words if I can. I've done this for the last couple of cabinet meetings, and I think it's important that I do so today. And I do so because the First Minister has today set out the aspects of the new national measures that will come into place in Wales from the 9th of November when the firebreak lockdown comes to an end. If you don't know, from next week, the following will apply to keep Wales safe. Where it's possible, continue to work from home, and you should continue to do so unless you absolutely need to, so work from home. Non-essential retail and hospitality will reopen. All schools will reopen for all pupils of all ages, and it is possible that 2 households will be able to join together to form an extended household or bubble. So we're going back a little stage. Travel, this is the difference really. Travel within Wales will be permitted, but people should only travel where the journey is essential. Travel outside Wales will be permitted only with a reasonable excuse. Welsh Government has sought the views of the council leaders throughout this planning, and I am confident that we will exit the firebreak in a new set of national measures and will be effective in helping to prevent the transmission of the virus, and helping to do that by proper enforcement. I've got a lot of things going on in the background here, sorry. Residents of the Vale deserve greater praise for the way in which we've once again pulled together to support each other. I know that entering the firebreak, even though we knew it would only last for 17 days, was not a prospect anybody welcomed. I know I certainly didn't. However, the decision of the UK government to introduce a 4-week lockdown for Wales, England this weekend shows that here in Wales, we were correct to take early action. While it's actually too early for sure to know what the impact the firebreak will have and has had, what we can do is only hope that they will have some maximum benefit if it's observed in full by all. And that actually has to take for as long as necessary. So we really do need to take the action until the 9th of November. As I said, we're halfway through the firebreak, but a week can make a huge difference. As hard as it is to change the way we live our lives and cut out our social contact, we must continue to work together to do so. The evidence of the first 10 days of the firebreak tells us that compliance in the Vale is generally very good, but I have to say the virus is not and has not yet reduced enough to date. In fact, it's slightly gone up. So I hope if we continue this for a further week, and we know that the results will be delayed for at least 10 to 14 days after that, that this will change for the better. I say that because sadly there are some who do not recognise their social responsibility and who are flouting the rules. The Council's regulatory service team will and will continue to work closely with South Wales Police over the next 7 days to make sure wherever breaches of rules occur, enforcement action follows. So until the 9th of November, people must refrain from mixing with anyone outside their household, either indoors or outdoors, and continue to work from home wherever possible. While people are able to take unlimited exercise, all but essential journeys are prohibited, and I think that's an important point to remember. So you can exercise, but please stay local. And all shops other than those selling essential goods will remain closed in line with the many council facilities such as libraries and household waste and recycling centres. They will remain closed until the 9th of November 2. Our schools have reopened to all primary pupils and those in secondary school of years 7 and 8. However, older pupils will still be taught from home, only attending school for exams. So that's until, again, next week. Again, in line with this, the visits to care homes in the Vale care sector remains restricted to essential visits only. So it's vital that if you display any symptoms of coronavirus, which is a new continuous cough, a high temperature and or loss of change of smell or taste, you should isolate immediately. You should book a test and remain in isolation until you receive the results and advice of what to do next. So if you have a test, please isolate until you have the results. Coronavirus is highly contagious, and we all have the responsibility to ensure we do not spread it to others. And you can find more information and book a test from Welsh Government on their website. So if you have to need a test, check Welsh Government website. I said before, I know that living with restrictions is not easy. The Council's Vale Hero Support Team continues to be available to support residents who find themselves in need of additional support, and that team can be contacted by telephone on 01446 729 592. I'll say that again, on 01446, get it right, 729 592. Details of the many support services available, including supermarket deliveries and community groups, can also be found on the Vale Heroes section of the Council's website. And again, you can look on our website for that. I understand that more detail is expected on the new national measures over the course of this next week. And indeed, I have met with ministers and other council leaders over this last weekend. We've had several meetings, and I expect to have more during the course of this week. And those meetings also include our chief executives and managing director in our case. As any new information emerges, we will be reviewing all our council services to ensure we're still able to deliver them effectively, and I will keep all residents informed of any changes as and when decisions are taken. In the meantime, my message remains to you all, which is a simple one. Please stay at home for as long as you can. Only go out for essential reasons, work from home, and help us and the community stay safe. I'm sorry it's a very long comment, but I think it's important that we realise that we still have a week to go, and in that time we can still make a difference. Our figures need to come down because they're not coming down currently, and I'm hoping that if we can make that difference, as I said, there is a lag of a fortnight, so we will know in 2 weeks after the 9th of November whether it's been effective or not, and it can only be effective if everybody plays by the rules and does exactly as they're required to. Okay, I'm sorry about that, it took a long time. Our next item is to go to the agenda proper, and the first one is a reference from Audit Committee in relation to Corporate Risk Register for Q1. It is a very extensive document. The report provides members with an overview of the corporate risks for the quarter from April 2020 to December 20. In terms of the corporate risk, there were 16 corporate risks on the register. There was a new risk included of CR19, COVID-19. And Audit Wales were consulted in order to gain their input and opinion as to the risk itself. And we've had feedback from Audit Wales, and therefore that's been considered and incorporated in the risk. We have still have 6 risks scored at medium high, 9 at medium, and 1 risk at medium low. So there's not really been a significant change during the risk status during the first quarter. But COVID-19 has obviously had a significant impact on all aspects of the risk register. And in acknowledging of all this, all the risks on the register have been reviewed, and risk descriptions have been redefined to reflect the influence of the pandemic. Obviously, because of the pandemic, it is anticipated there may be some further movements in the risk scores, and as the impact and the repercussions of COVID are fully realised, then they will be reviewed and changed. As I said, this is a reference from Corporate Audit Committee. There were some issues that which were raised, and they are raised in the report, and some of which are highlighted. They were highlighted by me, to be honest. And there are some things like referring to cross-cutting issues of things like Brexit and COVID-19. And the committee did ask for further input in relation to things like waste collection, information security, 21st Century Schools programme. And assurances were given there would be a sense check in terms of those, and they will be undertaken, and they will be reported back to that committee in due course. Clearly, in terms of some of the issues, in terms of information security, we have moved steadily in ICT terms, in terms of Office 6365. In terms of waste, we've entered the blueprint, and we're carrying out the blueprint in Barry. That has been fairly successful, I say. In terms of the Brexit and COVID-19, further information was requested on things like personal protective equipment, welfare reform, additional learning needs bill, etc. And they have been assured that there will be reports coming back to the Audit Committee in January. So basically, to be honest, I don't intend to go through the whole report because it is a massive report. I'm content to say that the Audit Committee felt that the report should be endorsed. Indeed, they praised the efforts of the performance team, and I would like to do that too. It is a very comprehensive report. So what I'm going to ask is that the Cabinet has considered this report, endorse the risks and the register itself. And because it is so important, I think what we really need to do as a Cabinet is to receive quarterly reports, by exception probably, in terms of the risks, so that we are up to date as well as anybody else can be in terms of the risks that are associated with anything that we do as a council. As I say, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy the Audit Committee has taken a very comprehensive view of it. We have the report before us. I don't know if anybody wants to raise anything within it, but my recommendation is that we endorse the risks and the register, but we also receive quarterly reports in future, particularly highlighting any of those areas that need to be highlighted. I don't know if anybody's got any comments.
I'll formally second, Leader.
Okay. Anybody else? In that case, I'll formally second. And we will look forward to further reports in due course. The next report is a report again from the Audit Committee in relation to the corporate complaints received from customers and the Public Service Ombudsman annual letter for the corresponding period. As you probably know, the Council adopted the Welsh Government's Model Corporate Concerns and Complaints Policy in July 2013. All corporate complaints complaints and compliments, and there are many compliments, are recorded and fed into the Complaints and Compliments dashboard. They do exclude social services complaints which are resolved via a different procedure and are reported separately. The purpose of the policy is to ensure that complaints experience are consistent. That complainants experience a consistent and fair response. Recording and monitoring of complaints allows the council to gain insight into citizen satisfaction with the services, understand how satisfied customers are and how we investigate those complaints, how we monitor and respond to the statutory guidance and customer expectations regarding how quickly we complete complaints and investigations. We also need to identify any improvements in service that can be analysed by learning from those complaints. The analysis of the complaints for 2019-20 indicate that the complainants are satisfied with how complainants are satisfied with the complaints are investigated. The underlying trends for complaint volumes are steady. They're relatively the same as they were last year. Responsiveness is improving. Complaint handling is meeting the required of our statutory bodies, and an increased focus on learning from complaints is required. During the year, the Public Service Ombudsman received 30 complaints relating to the council, fewer than the 37 in which is expected for an average council based on our population size, and indeed unchanged from the previous year. Only one complaint was taken into consideration by the Public Service Ombudsman during the year, although this is yet to be resolved to date, at the date of this report. So basically, the annual report details complaint performance of the directorates for 2019-20 and includes performance trends since 2014-15. So basically, the report is before you. I don't think we want to make any comments, but I will move that the contents of the report, Appendix A, which is the annual complaints and compliance report, and Appendix B, the annual letter from the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, be noted, and that I think that it's obviously clear that the Audit Committee will continue to receive annual updates, as will we, and therefore what I'm asking is the Cabinet endorse the report on the basis of the response from the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. Anybody got any comments to make in relation to this, please? I can't see any hands.
No, I'll formally second.
Okay, no comments from anyone? Okay, thank you very much. And again, the reports will continue to go to Audit Committee, and again, we will receive any issues that need to be considered. The next item is a report of the Cardiff Capital Regional Cabinet of the 14th of September. It is here for noting. It does cover lots of areas that have been addressed at that meeting. So what I'm going to ask you to do is that we note those reports. However, I'm going to make a further recommendation because part of the work of the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet is that they do wish to come along to councils and give an overview of the work that they've undertaken. And there has been a request for a presentation to our council. I have acceded to that, and I will arrange for a presentation to the council to be at the earliest opportunity. But formally, can I formally note the minutes, and that I will be looking for a presentation from the Cardiff Capital Region management team at council in the fullness of time. Is that acceptable? Yes?
Yes.
Agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
Good, you are there. Thank you. Okay, next item is the review of statues, monuments, street names and building names. This report sets out proposals for reviewing statues, monuments, street names and building names in the Vale of Glamorgan in light of the current concerns on the interpretation of some of the names associated with those statues, monuments, street names, buildings, etc. And therefore it's proposed that all town and community councils, as well as the public, are invited to make representations for commemoration that should be reviewed to ensure they are appropriate. It's also proposed that representatives will be sought from those in underrepresented groups who may have an opinion on the review and may also wish to make commemoration proposals. In addition, it's also proposed that a panel be established to review the representations received, to be made up of elected members, an officer of the Council Strategic Group and external representatives appointed by the Cabinet. The recommendations of the panel would be reported to Cabinet for consideration in due course. The Council has a long history of progressing the equality agenda. A new strategic equality plan for 20 to 2024 has been adopted this year to provide a framework within which to take forward positive action in line with the duties of the Equality Act and to influence the work of the Council across all of its services. In addition, the Council is proactive in promoting the equality agenda through its sense of place initiatives, promotion of the arts, and through commemorating particular events at particular times of the year. As we all know, earlier in 2020, the Black Lives Matter movement brought the world's attention to important issues relating to ongoing racism that exists in the world. The Strategic Equality Plan contains details of the anti-racism actions which are underway and or planned. However, it is clear that more needs to be done to tackle racism. One important issue that was raised during the Black Lives Matter movement related to how commemorations of history should now be reviewed to ensure they are appropriate to the current time. In June, I indicated the need to begin work to proactively review all statues and commemorations, including street names, public buildings and plaques in the Vale of Glamorgan. This work will be to ensure statues and commemorations on public land, as well as the names of streets and buildings to be reviewed, are representative of local people's values and those of a modern, inclusive council. In July, the First Minister made announcements, and that's covered in the report, and he says it's time that we properly reflect on the representation of Black, Asian and minority ethnics living in the heritage of Wales. We need to re-examine the way some of our public monuments and buildings are valued and consider what they say about us, our society today and our shared history. A Welsh Government task and Finnish group has been established, led by Gaynor Gal. Gaynor I've known for many, many years, and I know she will do an excellent job. This report also sets out proposals for progressing a local review of those statues, etc., and seeks approval to engage our communities in this important area. I'm sorry, I'm going to read this in full because I think it's important. The Council will continue to contribute to the work of the National Task and Finish Group, but it's also important that we take this action locally, with as wide a range of people involved as possible. The movement has rightly prompted people to consider the appropriateness of commemorations or acknowledgement of people and events from history and their relevance of today. Particularly the case is where links relate to the intolerable slave trade that existed. So as well as reviewing the appropriateness, we should also consider the positive recognition of people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, as well as other representative groups who have had too. This is an important part of celebrating the diverse community which exists within the Vale of Glamorgan and across Wales. So it is proposed that a review will be undertaken both for historic perspective, but also to invite consideration for further recognition of individuals or events that celebrate diversity and important events in our recent history. The review is to reach across the whole of the Vale, to work with the town and community councils. We'll also invite people from anywhere really to identify commemorations of historical figures which may be the cause of concern, view on how these concerns should be addressed, and to identify people from underrepresented backgrounds or elsewhere to commemorate in the future. The council will also investigate representations from the public via social media as an example. As I said, this is not going to be restricted, so if we have anything come in, we will consider it. It is proposed that the representations from the public and town and community councils be invited by the end of December 2020 to make submissions. A panel will review the findings to determine the action that should be taken, and that could well include the removal or retention of any statues or commemorations and potential renaming of any streets or public buildings, alongside the identification of any issues that require additional information or education. Proposed actions will be informed by representations made to the panel. It is not the purpose of this Cabinet report to make specific recommendations relating to any particular or specific case, as this would be premature and would preempt the work of the panel and the future consideration of Cabinet. The report does set out that it's proposed the panel will be established. It also says it will be comprised of myself as leader, the deputy leader of the council, the member equality champion, the member LGB champion, an officer from the council strategic leadership team, and a representative from local history societies and Vale of Glamorgan Stand Up to Local Racism. I know that we've had some representation from Councillor Johnson in relation to some of the issues in relation to that, and I will address some of those because I will be changing some of the recommendations that are before us. One of which is whether or not we should consider issues in terms of somebody with Welsh language and Welsh history and Welsh culture. And I agree that there should be, and it was my intention to do that in any case, although it's not written within this report. As I said, there were some recommendations of delegation to the managing director and myself and the leader, and myself as leader and deputy leader, to draft the terms of reference. I will be changing that recommendation. But upon conclusion of the review, the panel, because again we'll set up the panel, there will be review it. The panel's recommendations on potential actions to be taken will be reported to the Cabinet for consideration and decision, with updates provided to the Cabinet, by the Cabinet to the Scrutiny Committee, Learning and Culture in due course. That is the relevant committee to which it should go. As I said, there are recommendations within the report, and I intend to change some of them, and I think it will become evident what I intend to do and why I intend to do it. So the first recommendation I'm moving is that it's recommended that the Cabinet notes the contents of this report. 2, it's recommended that the Cabinet endorses the approach to establishing a review as described in this report through the establishment of a panel comprising of the leader and deputy leader of the council, the member equality champion, the member LGBT champion, an officer from the council strategic leadership team, and 1 representative from local history societies. And I say societies because if we consider anything within Barry, Lantwick Major, Cowbridge, or whatever, and they have local history societies, then we would look for a representative from them. And from the Vale of Glamorgan Stand Up to Racism organisation. 3, that in pursuance of recommendation 2, the terms of reference for the proposed panel will be drafted and will be reported to Cabinet for approval. So that's the change. We were going to give delegation, we now change our mind in that to be open and clear that any proposed recommendation will be reported to panel for approval prior to the first meeting of the panel, which in which terms of reference will also be set out to the membership of the same, as well as the intention to receive evidence and input from various representations and organisations with an interest in the history, culture and language of the Vale of Glamorgan and its communities. So we are widening the scope, and I think that's reasonable to do so. We have been requested to do so, and I think it's not an unreasonable request. 4, it is recommended that the report to be sent to all town and community councils for their consideration and involvement as described in this report, but I also asking that this report be referred to the next Community Liaison Committee for their information and consideration. And it says information, should be consideration. So it will be sent there for their consideration. Finally, the 5th recommendation is recommended that this report and future reports on the terms of reference will be referred to the Scrutiny Committee. So the terms of reference will be looked at. They will come to this Cabinet for consideration again, and any agreements that we feel should be in the terms of reference will then be sent to Scrutiny for their further consideration, and then we'll come back to Cabinet for ratification. This may mean that we may have to extend things a little, and we did say in the report that we were asking for comments by the end of December, which I guess we could extend to the end of January, because I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to do that, because I can't see the panel meeting quickly and taking quick results. So if we could extend the consultation, which is in the report, till the 30th of December, I think we could take it to the 31st of January. So anybody's got any comments? I have spoken for a long time. My voice is going, but there you go. Any comments from anybody, please, while I have a little drink?
If I could come in, leader. I don't know what's happened there.
Yeah, please.
Oops. I don't know, somehow I'm getting a lot of feedback. This is a hugely complex topic, but it's one that is right to address at this time. And in that, I'm grateful for the Black Lives Matter movement actually being the catalyst to bring this on the agenda. But I think it's broader. People within the Vale should feel that they belong and are valued within their community. And that means that the environment in which they live should also demonstrate that they are part of that community. A couple of things that I'd like to add to that is, many people have told us that the lights in the shelters on Barry Island and in the tunnel in Hood Road are not just a bit of fun, that by using them to mark events and special days, they reassure people that this is their community. More so at the moment, we can't gather this year for Remembrance Day, but by turning all the lights red, we can demonstrate to people that it's very much in all of our minds at this time of year. And that's hugely important. Sometimes we light the lights up with things that are smaller and matter to fewer people, but they still matter. I'd like to do more of that with our sense of place work right across the Vale. I also think that when we look at this work, we need to also make it a positive in terms of looking at the people that haven't been commemorated, the people that are important, that have made a difference to either their communities, to nationally or even internationally. And I don't know how some of those have been missed, but I think this is an opportunity to put that right. But it is worrying for some people if they suddenly think that, the name on their street's going to be ripped off or something. And there's going to be an awful lot of thought, an awful lot of discussion. But if I can say, if you lived in sort of Savile Close or Glitter Avenue, you probably wouldn't be too bothered about having the name changed if they had actual attachment to those individuals. But then if you lived in somewhere that was called West Way, it could be that it's on the west of the town and it might not be associated with Fred West and all the goings on there. So we have to think about this very carefully. We have to talk to people who understand the history of the area and understand the background to any names, and then discuss with those communities what is the appropriate course of action. So this is not a knee-jerk, but this is something that really needs to happen. So on that note, Leader, I'd be really pleased to second the report.
Okay, thank you, Liz. I think you may have had some hum on the background. If you have, I apologise. I think it's my laptop is fans coming on because it's probably too hot. So I've tried the headphones. Is that any better? Yes, good. Okay, thank you. Well, I've moved on recommendations. Anybody else got any comments to make in relation to this? I think it is going to go to scrutiny. We will have some issues raised there, but I think that's good. And we have addressed some of the comments that were made in terms of Welsh language and Welsh culture. I think we can move forward with that on that basis. Yes, so agreed. Good. So you can hear me. Good. Okay. The next item is item 8, which is the development of climate change action plan. This is basically to update the Cabinet on the work being undertaken in response to the climate emergency, which was declared by the Council in July 2019. The report details the activities undertaken to date and work planned to ensure that the Council has a well-informed and considered response involving partners, the public, staff and members. The report also details how Climate Change Action Plan will be developed, including arrangements for engagement and consultation. We did consider this on the 23rd of March, before the pandemic, and we also considered a report on the work of the Council and the Public Service Board with regard to climate change. So this report does provide an update as to where we are since then. It does contain various strands of activity that have been undertaken since the start of COVID-19, the subsequent lockdown and resultant changes in the work of the Council and the partners to seek endorsement to undertake a range of engagement and consultation to produce an action plan for publication in 2021. As I said, we did in March consider this and the Public Service Climate Emergency Charter and the conversation on climate change. This work has been developed during the pandemic, but some of it has not been possible to progress all the work that was originally planned. Some of the changes, however, are that we work that we have made as a result of COVID-19, and they actually do go in tackling the climate. For example, people who now work from home, the greater use of technology in support of online meetings, as we are doing now, less travel connected with the work, and in developing our action plan, we will build on these changes and take the opportunity to reflect on what we've learned and progress ourselves further. In the report, it talks about our commitment, and it talks about our commitment in terms of progress that have been made in terms of things like improvement to street lighting, for example, LED lights work and undertaken in 21st Century Schools program, promotion of active travel, in trying to stop less cars on the road, rolling out of recycling arrangements. I talked earlier that we're currently doing the blueprint in Barry, improvement to our housing stock, and indeed our new housing stock will also be well insulated, etc., to the best standards possible. Tree and wildflower planting, and obviously supplements to our planning policy. Then it talks about our green recovery in terms of the work that's there. Talks about how we are trying to help with progressing green infrastructure strategy. I talked about our active travel, working with the communities to reduce and recycle. Obviously, that's part of the recycling process. And we will redefine our approach to digital service delivery, but clearly we've gone some way with that. We will continue to work in partnership with things like the PSB, the Public Service Board, and I've referred to the work that they're going on and the charter that they've got. In terms of working forward, we also have taken into consideration the Future Generations report and the Future Generations Act, etc. This is an update report. I don't know if anybody wants to pick up anything in their own areas, but we're asked to note the progress, and there are recommendations which I will refer to later. Does anybody like to come in relation to their own areas? Because many of your areas have done a great deal of work. I see Liz got a hand up first. Do you want to go first?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think it's good that we said we'd work with others, and you've mentioned the PSB. We've said that we would get our own house in order, and we've been doing a lot of work on schools and also housing. Of the 3 primary schools that are currently under development, 2 of those will be low carbon and 1 will be a zero carbon school. And we're currently looking at how we can go one step further, so the entire construction, etc., works on it. We also have targets for the amount of waste which is recycled within those building projects, and a whole range of other things as well. People will have seen the proposals for the greening project around Gladstone Road in Barry, and there's also targets for things like tree planting and wildflowers, etc., in the biodiversity action plan. We also work with local stakeholders, tree planting activities with local voluntary groups have planted hundreds and hundreds of trees in our local communities, and we also are establishing a local biodiversity partnership, which unfortunately the first meeting was postponed because of the pandemic, but hoping to take that forward soon.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody else? Margaret?
Thank you, Leader. I would like to say that we have been working for the last few years to improve our council stock, and most of them are now done. But we will make sure with the new builds as well that they come up to the right standards. We will not let them fail either. Good. Wouldn't expect anything less, in fairness. Anybody else wants to come in? One thing that I didn't mention was right at the end of the report. It's our response to the emergency continues to evolve, and indeed there is an outline timetable on page 10, which shows the timetable from November through to December 2021, and that's for noting too. The recommendations are contained. The report asks that the Cabinet notes the report and the progress made since making the climate emergency declaration in July 2019. Endorses and proposed way forward for developing the Council's climate change action plan, which will be published in April 2021 in tandem with the annual delivery plan. That the Cabinet notes the Public Service Board's commitment to work together to tackle climate change and to agree the climate emergency charter, which will be supported by individual actions plans for organisations. 4, that the Cabinet endorses the proposals for engagement and consultation on climate change as described in the body of this report. 5, the Cabinet refers this report to the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee and the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee for their views on how this work is being progressed, and distribute to all members of the Town and Community Councils and Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee for their information. They're the formal recommendations. I will formally move them. Anybody happy to accept them, please?
I'll formally second.
Thank you very much. No other dissent. Ben, you got your hand up. Sorry, I just realised.
That's okay. Thank you, Leader. Absolutely happy to support this. And I think it's important, following on from declaring that climate emergency, there were a number of residents who got in touch with myself and no doubt other councillors saying, well, what does this even mean? And you know, what do you mean? What are the council going to do? How does this affect things? And I think that part about education and engagement is really important, because it's what we can all do to affect this change, which is important. And when you start thinking about the very many layers, and you know, Liz touched on it there with regard to how we procure, how we build our buildings, how we do everything, which is why it's taking that time to come forward with the plan, and I look forward to seeing what it says in April next year. So I'm absolutely happy to support this, and it's only through that engagement and everybody doing their parts that we're really going to make this difference. So thank you to the officers who put this together and everyone who's worked on getting it to this stage so far.
Okay, yeah, I think I agree and endorse the amount of work that's been carried out. It's incredible. And it's good that we're working in partnership with others too, and the PSP cover a multitude of organisations too, and they're all committed to meeting this aim. So if we're all agreed, yes, good, thank you. I'll move forward to the next item, which is proposals to increase the capacity of Ysgol Derry to meet future demands for special education in the Vale Glamorgan. Liz, I think you're Deputy Leader. You'll be taking this report.
I will, Leader, thank you. Please excuse, I'm juggling 2 computers at the moment, so I'm likely to get the wrong feeling. I think I'll be getting either the wrong mouse or the wrong computer at some point. Yes, this is a report basically seeking Cabinet approval to undertake a statutory consultation. It's part of the sort of multi-part, multi-stage proposal that we have to do with any new school. As outlined in the School Organisation Code 2018, on a proposal to meet future demand for special education in the Vale of Glamorgan. And we've already had in that recent Cabinet, that's all right. Recent Cabinet meetings, other proposals in terms of other things that we're doing, such as resource bases, etc. But this is about increasing the capacity of Ysgol Derry itself to accommodate an additional 150 pupils by constructing a new school building on a preferred site located in Cosmeston, Penarth, which would be under the management of Ysgol Derry itself. The proposal, as I said, would result in an extra 150 places, this report also talks about the temporary measures which will be required to meet the projected demand in the 2 years, 2.5 years before we envisage it would be built. If I can just run through. So in section 1, it basically talks about the 21st Century School programme, what we've been doing across the board in terms of providing first-class education for all our children in the Vale, both mainstream or special education. And in July of 2019, there was a sort of a more in-depth Cabinet report which talked about additional projects that we were going to develop, and as part of that revised programme, 11 million was allocated to expand Ysgol Derry. As I said, we've got a huge programme of work, and part of that, which you've already heard about, was looking at the replacement for a DITE, the Council's Pupil Referral Unit, to establish a centre for learning and wellbeing, specialist resource bases in mainstream schools so that children that are able to can have access to mainstream education, and this one. Section 2 goes into the demand for special education, and I won't go through it in too much depth now because this will go to scrutiny, and I would expect to have a very in-depth conversation there. But if you look at paragraphs 2.3 and 2.4, that gives you the projected numbers, and we are already running at over our numbers. We have had to make space by using T-Derry and converting part of that for the additional numbers we need, and as I said, we will need sizable numbers by the time this school would be available. Section 2.7 onwards talks about site options, and there was full consideration of a range of sites across the Vale of Glamorgan before going on this. Section 2.18 onwards talks about the transport implications, because obviously children in special education, more so than children in mainstream education, require transport and the relations there, what the benefits are, which is to meet projected demand for special education, that we don't have to do out of county placements, both for a financial perspective, but actually for a perspective of the children. We should be caring for our own children and not asking them to go into a neighbouring authority. Provides innovative and creative learning environments, and I think most of us that have seen the BBC documentaries about Derry will see just what an amazing place it is. And it increases the level of community access and interaction through using the school's education facilities, because children in special education actually need extracurricular activities as well. So that this sort of education will do that. 2.24 goes into the statutory process that we have to follow. 2.31 onwards talks about the temporary measures, which is that we're looking to put some temporary buildings on the Derry site to provide capacity for the extra 44 children until such a school could be built. So if I can just go back up to the top so I can get to the recommendations. There are 5 recommendations. Firstly, that Cabinet authorises the Director of Learning and Skills to undertake a consultation on the proposal to meet future demand for special education in the Vale of Glamorgan, and that's by increasing the capacity of Ysgol Derry to accommodate an additional 150 pupils, and constructing a new school building on the preferred site located in Cosmeston, Penarth, for September 2023, which would operate as an additional site under the management of Ysgol Derry. 2, that Cabinet refers this report to the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee for consideration as part of the proposed consultation exercise. 3, that Cabinet approves the identification of the preferred site to deliver the new school building, subject to a separate report to consider the acquisition of the site. 4, that Cabinet notes that implementation of the proposal would be subject to the approval of the relevant revenue and capital funding, which have been submitted as a cost pressure, as well as a future capital bid. And 5, that Cabinet notes that temporary measures to meet projected demand prior to the completion of the new school building are being developed, which would be subject to a capital bid.
Thank you, Liz. I don't know if anybody else wants to come in. I think we've actually shown how really good this provision is and how necessary it is. Ben, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm just echoing Liz's comments there. Yeah, anybody who saw that documentary about the work Ysgol Derry do would have been blown over by the dedication and commitment the staff have, but also how engaged the learners are and how equally they're treated to get the best education. So the ability to expand that provision under the leadership that's there at Ysgol Derry, I think, is something we definitely need to explore. Clearly, the consultation will bring forward a process regarding the site as laid out in the report. And I look forward to seeing what they say. But the ability for us to keep as many people who are in need of this education within the Vale of Glamorgan should be our *1 priority. And so yeah, I'm happy if it's not already been formally seconded the recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Everybody else, I think you're right though. Is it's such a successful provision that if we're going to provide more, and we have to provide more, because you can see that from 231 where we talk about you may have additional 88 with 44 leaving, which means that still additional 44 pupils. And it's right that if we create another one, it's got to be very close to it so that the management can be retained. So I'm very happy to go forward to these recommendations, and I think we also need to congratulate all those who work and support Ysgol Derry currently, and clearly we need to make sure that we can progress at this and provide the provision that we actually do require. So I'm very, very happy to go forward. So agreed with everybody? Yep, good. Thank you very much. The next item is item 10, which is the Bowls Club, which I said I would take to the end because I'm declaring an interest in it, and I will be leaving the meeting. So next item is item 11, which is a leisure management contract, and I think this is a part 1 report. So Catherine, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm bringing this report to you today in relation to the leisure management contract. The report seeking to cabinet approval to make continued interim payments to our leisure provider. We've done so throughout the pandemic. However, as we're coming originally out of lockdown, back into lockdown, staff are coming off furlough, we do need to have a look at the amount that we're actually paying them. So this report is obviously seeking to put the measures in place now. It also needs just to be noted that the leisure management contract has less than 2 years to run. And we need to kind of bear that in mind for the future. But ultimately, the recommendations are that we note this information now and move it to part 2 of the agenda, and a further report in relation to the financial position will come in January next year.
Okay, thank you very much. I will formally second. Is that agreed? I think so. We'll pick it up in the part 2. Next item is item 12, the annual report of the Director of Social Services. Ben, this is for you, I think.
Yes, thank you, Leader. As I'm sure you're all aware, the Director's report is a requirement from Welsh Government and is used by Care Inspectorate Wales to inform their assessment of the effectiveness of social services. An earlier version of this report, a challenge version as it's known, has been shared with Council's Strategic Leadership Team, Health Living Social Care Scrutiny Committee and external stakeholders. And that has been the basis for the final version and following that consultation. This will set out the key priorities to ensure that the Council and their priorities are aligned. So the recommendations are: Cabinet considers the contents of this report and that Cabinet approves the Director's annual report for 2019-20, which is attached to Appendix 1 to this report. That Cabinet agrees the improvement priorities for social services as set out in the Director's annual report for 2019-20. The report also obviously underlines the time frames for this have been altered as a result of COVID-19, as I'm sure we all expect for most reports that are annual and are coming to our attention. But I still think there are some important things not to be missed from the earlier part of the year, 2019-20, and those are reflected as well as obviously the beginnings of our response to COVID-19. So I move those recommendations formally.
Thank you, Ben. Does anybody got any comments? This has been reported to scrutiny in the past. This is an update, and clearly COVID-19 has had a major impact, but this is the report and slightly delayed because of that. But I'm happy to second it. Does that agree with everybody? Yes, good, thank you. Next item is item 13, social services training arrangements. Ben, again, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, another one from me. Back in November 2017, Cabinet approved a proposal to establish a regional social care workforce development training unit and provided delegated authority to enter into a partnership agreement to provide governance of this proposal. This partnership agreement runs until 31st of March 2021 and there's an option to extend. This report basically proposes that no extension is sought to this arrangement and that alternative local arrangements are put in place by social services together with the Organisations Development and Learning Department of Human Resources at the corporate level and the Council. Essentially, during this pandemic, we've been in a position to work very closely with local providers and actually identifying certain training needs there. I think it's become apparent that we have got these great communication links with local providers, and actually when it comes to our training provision, it will work even better if that's something developed locally that we can tailor to within the council, but also to the partners we work with in delivering the services we deliver. So to that end, the recommendations are: recommendation 1, that Cabinet agrees that current regional training arrangements should not be extended. 2, that subject to recommendation 3, Cabinet provides delegated authority to Director of Social Services in consultation with myself, Cabinet Member for Social Care, and the head of human resources to create a locally provided training service, which social services will be using to be effective from April 2021. And the Cabinet refers this report to the Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee. That should read Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee for their consideration. So with that slight amendment to the text, are we happy? I formally move that. Are we happy to support?
Yes, I'm happy to support. I think it's maybe one of the, can you call it a benefit of COVID-19? We've actually found a different way of work and found it a good way to work. So yeah, I'm happy to second it. Does anybody else got any comments in relation to that? Obviously, scrutiny will have a consideration. If they accept it too, then this will go forward as a full recommendation.
And I think further to that, Leader, we've talked before here about the recovery strategy and how we are reflecting, and I think this is a practical example of where we can identify a way of working more closely together. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good move forward. I think we've learned a lot, and we learn, and as with everything, we learn lessons. Okay, so is that agreed by everyone? Yes, please. Good. Okay. Next item is again from Ben, is the National Adoption Service Partnership Agreement.
Thank you. Thanks, Leader. This report seeks agreements for Vale of Glamorgan Council to enter into a partnership agreement with the National Adoption Service. The National Adoption Service was established in 2014. It comprised of 5 regional adoption collaboratives covering the 22 local authorities and 2 voluntary adoption agencies. The regional adoption collaborative for our region is Wales, Valleys and Cardiff, of which we are the host authority for that. In 2015, the governance structure at a national regional level was prescribed in regulation by the implementation of the Adoption and Children Act 2002, Joint Adoption Arrangements Wales, Directions 2015, hereon referred to as directions in the rest of the report. This partnership agreement is a non-legal agreement which sets out the terms, roles and responsibilities and conditions for the relationship between partners, determines the powers and duties of each partner, enabling compliance with these directions. So the recommendations are: the Cabinet agree to the Vale of Glamorgan Council entering into the partnership agreement with the National Adoption Service. The Cabinet delegate authority to the Director of Social Services to sign the agreement, and the update reports on the working of the partnership be presented to both Cabinet and the Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee on a regular basis. And I so move those 4 recommendations.
Thank you, Ben. Any comments from anyone? Seems a sensible move. It's been working quite well, hasn't it? So, okay. In that case, all agreed? Good. Okay. The next item is the end of part 1, which is taking you back to agenda item 10, which I'm declaring an interest in, and I will be leaving the meeting, and I will pass over to Councillor Burnett, Deputy Leader, to take this part of the meeting. And that, I didn't have any other items in terms of part 1, so I will be leaving the meeting. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you, Leader. And as he said, the Leader has left the meeting, not quite Elvis, but we'll move on to agenda item 10, which has been moved down, and that's Bowls Club's new leases, and that's a report of the Cabinet Member for Leisure, Arts and Culture.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. It's a bit strange when the leader's left the room, isn't it? This report is really a belt and braces report in relation to the significant progress we've made with the bowling clubs across the Vale of Glamorgan. As I'm sure you're all well aware, they are in the process of taking over their own leases and their own management. So today this report is seeking Cabinet approval to advertise the loss of public open space, as bowling greens are actually public open space. We're not actually losing it to anything else. They're just being maintained as bowling greens. But it's just to obviously make Cabinet aware of that. So the recommendations are that there were 3 recommendations: that the authority grants to the monitoring officer and head of services to dispose of the land, which the Mirchfield Bowling Club, Millwood Bowling Club, Romiley, Bellevue, Cadoxton, Central, Cowbridge and Roos Bowling Clubs by the way of a 25-year lease. If objections are received of the advertisement process, these are reported back to Cabinet, and the authority is granted to the Director of Environment and Housing Services in consultation with the Head of Finance to negotiate the terms and the monitoring officer to execute the leases. As I said, the leases are already in place, but it's just going to finish them off. So I would look for approval for that today, please.
So I'm happy
to formally second, Deputy Leader.
Thanks, Ben. Any comments from
much.
anyone else? No. So are we all happy with those recommendations?
That's great. Thank you all for your support.
Super. Thanks, Catherine. So that brings us to the end of the part one discussions. There are no urgent items. We have one item for discussion under part two of the agenda, which is a report again of the Cabinet Member for Leisure, Arts and Culture, discussing concerning the leisure management contract, COVID-19 implications, as a follow-on from the discussion under item 11 of today's agenda. As there are matters that are considered commercially sensitive, we'll need to move into private session where confidential matters can be discussed under part two. Therefore, myself and the Cabinet Officer will ensure that the recording is closed at this point and will ensure that only relevant parties remain to hear the detail of the item to be discussed. Following the meeting, the outcome of the part two discussions will be formally captured as part of the minutes of the meeting, advising all parties of the final decision of the Cabinet for this item. So on that note, if we're all happy, I'll move part two.